With me live in the Sydney studio and following strict social distancing and hygiene measures is the Opposition Leader Anthony Albanese. Thank you for coming in.
Good evening, Lee.
I'll come to China a bit later, but I just want to start with a few broad questions. Today we learned that 600,000 Australians have lost their jobs already in this crisis. More than half of the remaining workforce is on welfare in some form, either JobKeeper or JobSeeker. We currently have 17 people in ICU with COVID-19 and a reproduction rate of less than 1%. Is it time now to treat this as an economic crisis primarily, not as a health one?
Well, if we don't continue to listen to the medical advice, then it quickly will become both again will be exacerbated. Throughout this crisis, where governments have got it right is when they've listened to the science, not tried to second guess it, treated the health crisis first and then dealt with the economic consequences of dealing with the health crisis.
So do you think that state governments are striking the right pace in lifting restrictions?
Look, I think they are, and it's important, given the structure of the way that this pandemic is being dealt with, that we don't have mixed messages. And the Commonwealth message is pretty simple, which is it's up to the states. Now, it's not surprising that Victoria and New South Wales, which have the most number of infections, have been the first to push for larger restrictions, and they've been the slowest at lifting those restrictions. And what we can't afford to do is what has happened in some other jurisdictions of lifting the restrictions, then having to put them back. That would provide a real shock to the economy, as well as, of course, endangering people's health.
Are you, when you're talking to people, members of the public, getting any sense from them of urgency, that they feel a sense of urgency towards seeing restrictions lifted, or what's the mood?
Of course, no one wants this not to happen. I'm a bit of a rugby league fan, Lee, as you know. People want to see, all my friends want to see Souths running around again. We all want to see that. People want to see their AFL or their netball. People want to catch up with their mates. People want to catch up with their family and friends. And I think for many people, these restrictions have been more difficult than for others. For grandparents who haven't been able to hug their grandkids for a couple of months, that's tough. But the restrictions have been necessary. We have flattened the curve. And we've been very careful, Lee, as well, during this to be constructive, to not play politics. I think our actions stand in stark contrast to the actions of, say, the Victorian Liberal opposition.
The government's saying that it will evaluate the JobKeeper plan at the end of June to see what tweaks are needed. At this point, what do you think should be refined?
Well, I think quite clearly there are some inequities there. On the one hand, you can have people who might have had a part-time job, working their way through uni, earning $150 a week. All of a sudden, they're earning $750 a week. And at the same time, casual employees just missing out altogether. There are whole sectors like the arts and entertainment sector who've missed out. The Donata workers, they used to work for a company called Qantas Catering, dealing with airlines, airline food and products. And the government, it was this government that approved the foreign takeover of those companies. They've been doing the same job, but all of a sudden they've missed out on JobKeeper after being told originally that they would be eligible.
Do you reckon if you ironed out the situation where people are getting paid more than what they were previously earning, that would be enough to cover arts workers and casuals, or would you have to throw more money at it?
Well, I think when you look at the arts and entertainment sector, they deserve a special package of their own. The sort of people probably who, some of whom are working in this studio. It's not just people like, people think of yourself and artists. When we talk about the sector, it's the camera operators, the producers, the people who are the stagehands. They need some support, because this is the very sector that saw us through when the bushfire crisis was happening, were volunteering their time and their talent to help their fellow Australians. Now at the moment, they feel abandoned.
You've described this situation as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, political lifetime opportunity to reshape Australia. When you look at the economy, specifically when it comes to tax and tax reform, what sort of things should we be looking at?
Well, what we shouldn't be doing, Lee, is just snap back, which is what the government is talking about, to what was there before. Insecure work, people living in poverty, the circumstance where we didn't listen to science when it comes to climate change. During this period, there's an opportunity, I think, to both create and think about a better Australia, not just to what was there before. And part of that means a tax system will be part of that, but an industrial relations system whereby there's work being paid equally for work of equal value. At the moment, you've got the increased casualisation and insecurity that people feel at work, I think has really been exposed during this crisis.
But then the flip side of that might be that a lot of people were enjoying the flexibility of that kind of work as well.
Sure, and flexibility is a great thing. What's not good is if you have two people working next to each other doing exactly the same work on the same conditions, but one doesn't have annual leave, doesn't have any sick leave, isn't getting paid the same as the person they're working next to, just because they're hired by a labour hire company, which is essentially a cost minimisation scheme to get around the awards which are there. Now, we need to think about permanent work. Yes, it needs to be flexible, but it also needs to be fair. And we also need to think about the fact that bargaining at the moment isn't working for employers, because we had productivity going backwards for 2 quarters before this crisis in last year, in 2019, and at the same time wages have been stagnant. The figures this week were appalling with regard to wages in the previous quarter, so not related to the coronavirus.
Just on the situation with China declining to take meat and barley from Australia, what's your suggestion for how to resolve that ASAP?
Well, I think we need a mature response to these issues. Australia's quite right to say that, just as if we have a death in this country that is unexplained, we have a coronial inquiry. Here we have 300,000 deaths. There's nothing unremarkable, nothing remarkable about saying, well, we need to know what the cause of that is, not as an academic exercise, but so that we can ensure it never happens again. It isn't an attack on China. It shouldn't be seen as that. I think the debate isn't helped by having some of the government backbenchers, your George Christensen's, on a rare visit to Australia, making some of the comments that he's had, which are deliberately provocative. I want to hear more from the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, as well as our senior members, and they should be the ones that are out there talking about what is a complex relationship, but a very important one for Australia.
Anthony Albanese, thank you very much.
Thanks, Lee.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.